Okay, this will be the second to last video in this series, and these last two videos we're going to cover the final section of chapter 6 in your textbook. This final section, and let's take a look on page 211, this final section discusses different approaches to Medinat Yisrael. Now, in the previous videos, I've sort of alluded to the fact that when you talk about all of the prophecies of redemption that lay out for us what's supposed to happen when Mashiach comes, there's at least a very strong sense that many people have, and I probably have not hid the fact that I'm among these people who feel this way, that when you look at what's happened here in the land of Israel over the last 150 years or so, and particularly over the last 70 years since we have our own state, and what happened 51 years ago with the miracles of the Six-Day War and everything else, when you put that whole thing together, many people have a very clear sense that in fact the Mashiach is really very close, and in fact that the redemption, that the prophecies of Geula have already begun to be fulfilled. Let's just lay out the scene for a few minutes. If we were going back in time 150 years, or even more, let's say 200 years, the land of Israel was almost completely desolate. 200 years ago, there were maybe 100,000 people, or 210 years ago, or 220 years ago, at the end of the 18th, early 19th century, there were maybe 100,000 people in total living in the land of Israel. That's about 1% of the population of the country today. And the country, and of the 100,000 people, only about 10,000 were Jews. Today there are 6.5 million Jews and another few million non-Jews living here, close to 10 million people, where Jews are today a solid majority, and that wasn't the case. Back then, Jews were maybe 10% of the country, and the country was almost nothing. Where was Am Yisrael? Am Yisrael was all over the world in Galut. And what was here in Eretz Yisrael, besides those 100,000 people scattered in a few cities? The country was basically barren deserts and swampland. So, just like the Torah told us was going to happen, the land of Israel became barren and desolate, and Am Yisrael was in Galut. And what happened in the interim? Am Yisrael slowly started coming home, first very slowly, and then in greater numbers and greater numbers and greater numbers. And the land of Israel started to come to life. People built farms, and forests were planted, and cities were built, and roads and highways and all sorts of things. And eventually there were some terrible wars, both outside of the land of Israel, 2 world wars, one of which involved a terrible Holocaust, and wars that were fought here in the land of Israel. And Am Yisrael was hit by those wars and suffered in those wars, but survived the wars and ultimately emerged victorious, declared its own independent state. And today, almost half the Jews of the world are already back home in Eretz Yisrael, and if predictions, even just if the current trends continue, within a very short period of time, that's going to become a solid majority. And within a generation, probably much more than that, even if just current trends continue. We have, Baruch Hashem, a thriving economy and a powerful army, and the learning of Torah is flourishing in the state of Israel. So many people feel that, in fact, all the things that the Nevi'im promised us are going to happen are well underway. So that's the question. Is this in fact correct, or is there another way? And you may or may not know that this is a subject of major debate in the Torah world. And there are many Jews, we call them religious Zionists, who feel that in fact this is the coming of the Geula, or something connected to it. And those opinions we will discuss in the final video. But there are also Jews and great rabbis who are very much against saying that, and are very, first of all, are very against making any connection between what's happening today and the Yemot HaMashiach, or the Geula, or the redemption, and also are even against celebrating. You might know that on Yom HaAtzmaut, many of us celebrate a great holiday, and with special tefillot, we say Hallel, and we make celebrations, and we sing, and we dance, and all sorts of other things. But that's not something that's done in all Batei Knesset, and I'm sure many of you know, and maybe all of you, that there are Batei Knesset, maybe even some of the ones that you go to with your families, where either these events, Yom Ha'atzmaut and also Yom Yerushalayim, are observed in a different way, or perhaps aren't observed at all. So, what's that argument all about? In this video, we're going to discuss those who do not subscribe to the ideas of religious Zionism, who do not celebrate Yom Ha'atzmaut, for example, and certainly refuse to make any connection between all of the things I just described and anything having to do with the Mashiach. So we're going to be doing here now three different sources. So that'll be sources number 10, 11, and 12. That'll be starting on page 213 in the textbook, so you can already turn to that page over there. And these three sources, all of which are, like I said, non-Zionist or even anti-Zionist viewpoints, and we'll see that there are some differences between them. So let's start with the most extreme on page 213. Rav Yoel Moshe Teitelbaum, who was the Rav of Satmar, the Satmar Rav. He was born in Hungary. He was the head of Satmar Hasidut in Hungary. He escaped from the Nazis and went to the United States and lived in New York until he passed away in 1979. And he was one of those who are most viciously, extremely opposed to Zionism. And he made some very, very, very strong statements. So let's take a look. I'm reading from his Sefer Vayoel Moshe, that's the name of the Sefer he wrote, explaining why the state of Israel is not only nothing to do with the redemption, but it's even an evil, terrible thing. That's what he felt about the state of Israel, as surprising as that may be. And this little short excerpt will explain to us why. So please read with me on page 213. V'hinei hameharsim, those destroyers, he's talking about the leaders of the Israeli government, lakhu geula me'atzmam, they tried to take the redemption into their own hands, ayudei hishtadlut miguna, through this very, very despicable efforts that they made. Eitzel ha'umot lasot k'masehem. What did they do? They went around the world and started speaking to leaders of various nations to try to build support for the state they wanted to build and then the state that they had. And this, he says, was a despicable, terrible thing what they did. Tolinatzman bilan gadol. They claim to have a strong basis for this. Haramban zal. These Zionists, who he considers evil Risha'im, they claim that if you look at the great Ramban, who we read something from the Ramban at the beginning of the chapter, they claim that what they're doing is based on the Ramban, particularly the Ramban in Shir HaShirim, Shekatav shebirishyon malchei umotu ve'ezratam yalchu le'eretz Yisrael. After all, the Ramban in Shir HaShirim writes that the day will come when it's time for the Geula, that the nations of the world will allow us to go back to Eretz Yisrael. So the Zionists say, look what happened. We went around the world and we spoke to people, and eventually they allowed it. There was a vote. First of all, there was the Balfour Declaration, when Great Britain, that ruled Eretz Yisrael, declared their willingness for Am Yisrael to have a state. Then there was a vote in the United Nations on November 29, 1947, where most of the nations in the world acknowledged the right of the Jewish people to a state of their own. And then there was the recognition of the state of Israel by all the countries we have diplomatic relations with. So the Zionists say that, the Ramban says that when the nations of the world agree that we have a right to independence, that will mean that this is the Mashiach. And these Zionists who went around and got the people to say that, they think that the Ramban backs them up. What did the Ramban actually say? Why is the Melech HaMashiach described in the Navi, in Zechariah, as a poor man riding on a donkey? Aside, for some reason people always tell me it's a white donkey. To the best of my knowledge, the color of the donkey is never mentioned, but Zechariah does say he's going to be a poor man riding on a donkey. So, why is that, writes the Ramban? Remez, that's a hint, kilo bekashtamu v'charbam yishu eretz, that they will not inherit the land through military conquest. V'lo besus v'rechev. It's not that we're going to come with horses and chariots and conquer the land. Ki im b'rtzona borei. But rather it's going to happen, says the Ramban, It's going to happen through God's direct intervention. Shiapil v'yashpil kol umot lifnehem, that Hashem will wipe out all of the opposition, and we'll just be able to ride on a simple donkey into the city. We're not going to have to come with an army to conquer it. That's what the Ramban says. So says the Satmar Rav, that it's clear from this that the Satmar Rav says, this is the way he interprets the Ramban, that no practical efforts on our part are going to be part of this. We're not even going to need weapons. And therefore, he says, anyone who has a brain in his head, the terrible catastrophe that happened to us should be clear to anyone with a brain in his head. What happened? Asher, listen to this harsh language. Asher knufiya shel minim v'apikorsim, a band of heretics and non-believers. He's talking about the leaders of the Israeli government. Rachmana litzlan lachu Geula memshala terem hazman. They seized power before the time. Asher kol hagedolim v'atzadikim shebedorot hakodmim me'az she'atchil harayon hatamei shel hatzionut litnotzetz kulam pachadu v'ra'adu shelo yivutzaz mamam. He says, and those people violated the rule of what he calls kol hagedolim v'atzadikim, all the great rabbis and righteous people. We'll see that that's not exactly correct. There were rabbis and great tzaddikim who felt otherwise, but apparently the Satmar Rav doesn't consider them tzaddikim and gedolim. So according to him, all the rabbis, maybe we have to say some of the rabbis, many, opposed this impure idea of Zionism from the very beginning, and they were all terrified that the Zionists shouldn't be able to accomplish their evil plans. And now this is very important what he's about to say. Why was this an evil plan? Listen to this. She'af ilu hayu chavrei hakneset tzadikim ukdoshim hu avon plili. Even if all the members of the Knesset and all the members of the government were tzadikim and they all kept the Torah, it would still be a terrible sin. Avon plili ayom v'nora. Why? Likach geula u'memshala terem she'giya hazman. Because we decided to take the redemption into our own hands before God decided that it was time. V'im kain. In other words, before I go on, let me just explain. The Satmar Rav's basic point here is that why were we sent into Galut in the first place? Why was there a Churban? Why was there a destruction? Because we sinned. And Hashem promised us that when is the Mashiach going to come? When we do tshuva. If the Mashiach hasn't come yet, apparently we haven't done tshuva. So what are we supposed to do? We're supposed to do tshuva. What did we do? We decided instead that it's time to just, it's not worth waiting anymore. We're just going to solve this problem ourselves instead of waiting for Hashem to do it for us, which is a terrible sin. That's the way the Satmar Rav views it. If you want a little analogy that I like to give, imagine I'm a parent and I get very angry at my child who did something wrong, and I tell my child, go to your room and don't come out till I tell you to. The worst thing the child could do is come out of his room early. He has to wait for his parent to say, okay, now I'm not angry anymore, now you're punished enough, now you can come out of your room. But what did we do? We got tired of waiting for Hashem to let us out of our room. Galut is the room. So we came out on our own, and that was a terrible sin. Being Cain, and therefore it doesn't, even if all the people in the country and all the people in the government were Shomrei Torah, all observed the mitzvot, it would still be a terrible sin. Everybody who participates in this government, it's like they worshipped idols. It would be better to die than to participate in the Israeli government. Understand, he's not only talking about the non-religious members of the government. All the Haredim that are in the government. We have members of Knesset that are Haredim. We have government ministers, or at least we have in the past we still do actually have government ministers who are Haredim, who are very religious people. According to the Satmar Rav, they're doing a terrible Aveira. It's better to die than do that. And not only them, but anyone who votes for them, anybody who in any way participates, is doing a terrible Aveira, because we're all participating in this project where we tried to take things into our own hands. We built a state on our own without waiting for God to do it for us. Otah Medina HaTzionit, that Zionist state, shehi legamrei neged HaTorah Kedosha, which is completely against the Holy Torah, umiyusedet al kfira norah, and is founded on complete rejection of Torah. She'ein safek shu legamrei neged ha'emunah b'Hashem yitbarach. It's clear that it's totally against faith in God, u'v'Torah Torah Kedosha, and in God's Torah. Ve'i efshar sheyihiyu elu shtei ha'emunot. It's not possible that you can hold simultaneously these two beliefs. Emunah b'medina zo, ve'emunah b'Toratenu HaKedosha. Either you have to believe in Torah or you have to believe in Zionism. And it's one or the other. And if you believe in Zionism, it means you don't believe in Torah. So this is unbelievably extreme viewpoint by the Satmar Rav, who felt that the state of Israel is a complete rebellion against God. Now, what's clear from this, well, you know what, I'll get to that in a minute, okay? But again, the Satmar Rav is condemning here not only secular Zionists who don't follow the Torah, not only religious Zionists who follow the Torah but celebrate Yom Ha'atzmaut and things like that, but even people who don't call themselves Zionists, like the rabbis we're about to read, but who still cooperate with the state of Israel, who run for office, who vote in elections, who pay taxes, who accept government benefits. Satmar yeshivot don't accept any, here in Israel, don't accept any government money that they're entitled to. They refuse to take any payments or subsidies from the Israeli government because, according to them, the Israeli government is completely prohibited. You're not allowed to benefit from something. It's like avodah zarah. That's one viewpoint. Turn the page to 214, and let's just read now sources 11 and 12 by two different rabbis who also lived not that long ago, and who took a different viewpoint. Not quite as extreme as that of the Satmar Rav. They did accept the existence of the state of Israel, and they were willing to work with it. Both of them encouraged people to vote in Israeli elections, and one of them, the first one, actually was involved in creating a political party here in the land of Israel, in the state of Israel, and to pay taxes and to accept government benefits, but not to think that this has anything to do with Mashiach. So the first is Harav Elazar Menachem Shach, who passed away about 10, 15 years ago. He lived in Bnei Brak, and he was the head of the yeshiva, it's called Panovich, the yeshiva Panovich in Bnei Brak. And he was the leader of the Haredi community here in Israel until he passed away. And he says the following on page 214. Shema Tomar, lest you think, Anachnu la'om, we are a nation. Yesh lanu eretz mishalanu, yesh lanu medina, yesh lanu chayalim, yesh lanu tzahal, anachnu chazakim. He says, don't make the mistake to think we're a nation, and like every other nation, we have a land of our own, we have a government, we have a state, we have an army, we're strong. Don't think that. Why is that wrong to say that? If you say that to me, I'll ask you a question back. Kama zman yesh lachem kol zot? How long has it been that you, Zionists, have had this state, this government, this army? A couple of decades. Ha'im lifneichen, for thousands of years before that, lo haya kam b'mtziut am hayudi? Was there no Jewish nation before that? Ha'im rak b'kinyanim halalu na'aseinu am yudi? If you think that we're a nation because we have a state and a government and an army, so what was going on before that? We weren't a nation? So it's all wrong, he says. Mashim yached otanu, what makes us unique? Zo haTorah. Shenitna lanu lifnei 3,000 shana v'yoter. The Torah that was given to us over 3,000 years ago, that's what makes us a nation. Matzavenu kayom matzav retzini biyoter. Our situation today is very serious. Mitzad echad roim simanei hitorut rabim. On the one hand, we see much awakening. Harbei rechokim mitkarvim v'shavim eleinu. Baruch Hashem, many people who are distant from Torah are trying to come back to Torah. I don't know if there was ever in the past such a phenomenon, a time period when people were returning and coming back and doing tshuva like they are today. But mitzad sheni, ro'im anu machazeh macharid b'ayom. We also see something very, very terrifying, Mered kibbutzi b'malchut shamayim, a collective rebellion against God, which is how he views all of those who are not religious, including how he viewed the Israeli government, which was a government, which still is a government, that does not completely comply with the laws of the Torah, does not enforce the laws of the Torah. Yesh havdel atzum, he says, and that's terrible. You have an Israeli government, for example, that allows Chilul Shabbat, maybe even passes laws allowing Chilul Shabbat, that pays for schools that teach, in the secular Israeli schools, the Mamlachti school system, they teach some things that are against the Torah. So that's terrible, he says. And it's much worse than when an individual does it. Yesh havdel atzum ben yachid achoteh beino levein atzmo. There's a big difference between an individual who sins by himself, levein tzibur hamonim shetargenu, but between an individual who sins, or even a group of individuals, each one sins. There's a big difference between that and an entire collective where people get together and they organize themselves to systematically create a system that allows them and enables them to live a life of sin. That's much worse. So if Jews live, let's say, in America, and they don't keep the Torah, so each one is an individual. But here, they put together a country which is run by laws that enable them to do that. That's so much worse. Uviyoter kasheh hadavar, kisheyesh be'eretz Yisrael shilton ivri. And it's even worse that there's this Jewish government in the land of Israel that's doing this. Yachid shemechalel Shabbat chas v'shalom, when an individual Jew violates Shabbat, nidmelo sheyeshi tu teirutzim parnasa b'chadoma, he can always say, listen, it's hard for me, I have to make a living. He's got excuses. Hu misugal liramot et atzmo, at least he can convince himself that he has excuses. Ach la'elu she'omdim lirshutam kol ha'emtzaim ha'mamlachtiyim, ma yesh l'tartzam. But those who have all the powers of government in their hands, what excuse do they have? Halo medubar b'yudim b'nei chorin? It's not like in Chutz La'aretz, you could say, listen, if I don't go to work, my boss is going to fire me. But here you have your own country. B'medinat shalanu, Medinat Yisrael, Nasim shalanu. We have our own government, our own country, our own president and prime minister. Im shilton b'tzava, our own army. Hakol meturetzet mitotzeret atzmit. We have our own, everything we've created on our own. Mima kei badam shetishamer po Shabbat kodshenu. So who's stopping them from keeping Shabbat? It makes it much, 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 much worse. Halev bocheh, halev ko'ev. The heart cries out for this. So says Rav Shach, he's not saying what the Satmar Rav said. He's not saying we don't have a right to have a country at all. Okay, there's a country, but it's not. But what's going on here is terrible because this country is not observing the Torah. According to the Satmar Rav, even if everybody would observe the Torah, he said it would still be a terrible sin. Rav Shach is not saying that. If the country would observe the Torah, if everybody here would keep Shabbat, and everybody here would learn Torah, and the government would support that, then it might be a wonderful thing, but that's not what's happening. Because the country's not religious, he says it's bad, and therefore it can't certainly be anything to do with the Geula, but still it exists, and therefore we'll do what we can to participate to try to make things better, but don't think that there's anything good about it. So again, he's not as extreme as the Satmar Rav, but he's also certainly against connecting this with the Mashiach. And finally, source number 12, let's just read one more source from Rav Menachem Mendel Schneerson Zatzal, the late Lubavitcher Rebbe, the most recent Lubavitcher Rebbe, who passed away in New York about 25 years ago. And I'm sure you've all heard of. We read earlier from some of the earlier Rebbes of Lubavitch, the Balatanya and the Rebbe Rashab. So this is the most recent and final Lubavitcher Rebbe, who says the following. Page 214 going on to 215. La'achar shera'a kadosh baruch hu be'oni Yisrael shenishchatim v'neheragim b'gzeirot hayumot v'noraot. He's going to tell you here how he views the state of Israel. He says, what happened here? It's interesting. Earlier we talked about the miracles and the reasons why many people think, as we'll discuss in the final video, the miracles that seem to have happened and how those seem to fulfill the prophecies. Rav Shach's not relating to that at all. The Satmar Rebbe didn't relate to it in the section that we spoke about here, but he did discuss it elsewhere. He had to say, the Satmar Rebbe, that those miracles were things that God did to test us. because according to him, we weren't allowed to fight those wars, and how is it that we won the wars? So he says that was a nisayon, that was a test from God. We'll see how the Lubavitcher Rebbe has a different way to look at it. He says, after God saw all the terrible things that happened to Am Yisrael, Jews who were murdered and killed, he's talking about the Holocaust and all sorts of other things. Natan lahem ha'efsharut be'emtza zman galut, during the exile. And that's a crucial point, because according to the Lubavitcher Rebbe, the exile is still completely in force and the redemption has not yet begun. But during the exile, he gave them the opportunity lehitnaheg b'chol ha'inyanim kirtzonam, to control their own lives. So the Satmar Rav is actually saying that the state of Israel was an opportunity that Hashem gave us, not that it was the Geula, it's not the redemption, it's not the Mashiach, but during the Galut, because of all the terrible things that happened, Hashem gave us an opportunity to run our own lives, to have our own independent country. This gave us great opportunity. So he's saying something similar. He's saying in a more positive light, for now, similar to what Shach said, that in source number 11, that we were given the opportunity to act in a holy manner, al pi horat Toratenu Kedosha, to follow the Torah. Now we have our own country; we can make whatever laws we want. If we would have taken that opportunity, and if we would have acted properly, then we would have shown that in fact we are worthy of redemption. But instead of that, instead they had a whole fight about whether they should put God's name into the Declaration of Independence. The background behind that comment he made is that when the State of Israel was declared in 1948, they read a document, Megillat HaAtzmaut, the Declaration of Independence. And David Ben-Gurion was prime minister, but of course he didn't act on his own. There was a whole group of people, representatives of the different groups, that had to vote to approve that document. And there was a big debate, there was a big argument, because the religious people wanted to put God's name in there. They wanted to say something like, B'chasdei Hashem Yitbarach, that we are so thankful to God for this incredible opportunity. But there were many secular Jews who were atheists, who were opposed to that and refused to put it in. In the end, what they did was they put it in a sort of veiled way. It says at the end of the declaration, Mitoch bitachon b'tzur Yisrael. Based on our bitachon, based on our trust in Tzur Yisrael, the rock of Israel, we declare this state. So that's an expression, Tzur Yisrael. We say it in our tefillah, Tzur Yisrael kuma bezrat Yisrael. Religious people could relate to that as a reference to God, but secular people could interpret it their other way. That's how they made a compromise. Also, after they read it, they did have a rabbi get up and say Shechianu. But in the document itself, they only put in this sort of hint at God, and they wouldn't even mention God's name directly. So says the Lubavitcher Rebbe, look at this opportunity. God gave them the opportunity to have a state of their own, and they could have used that to be Mekadei Shem Shemayim. Instead, they had a whole argument. That's what they did. Instead of acting like a holy nation, they had it, right? And compare that, for example, to the United States. On the money, it says, in God we trust, right? And God's mentioned, I believe, in both in the Declaration of Independence and in the Constitution. And that's true also in many other countries. But Dafka Am Yisrael refused to mention God's name openly. And that, he says, was a terrible thing. So we missed that opportunity. So the establishment of the State of Israel was a good thing, says the Lubavitcher Rebbe. It was an opportunity from Hashem to show that but it wasn't the redemption. It was an opportunity to show that we're worthy of redemption, and sadly, we failed to take advantage of that opportunity, and we missed the chance. Page 215. And therefore, so what's the situation now? L'or kol anal, harei sheb'vo'enu lahagdir et ma she'hitchadesh b'matzavo shel Am Yisrael be'eretz Yisrael lefnei 30 shana. He wrote this in the 1970s. So he said, if we want to understand what happened 30 years ago, now we'll say 70 years ago, Nomar, we'll say the following. What did happen in 1948? So he says, Hatzalat nefashot kin. Many Jewish lives were saved, and that's an incredible, wonderful thing. Efsharut limud Torah b'kiyum mitzvot mitoch menucha ken. and we're given the opportunity to learn Torah and do mitzvot much easier than we did in Chutz La'aretz? Yes, and that's also a good thing. But has anything changed regarding the redemption, or that Mashiach has begun to come? Does the independence of the Jewish people, the political independence in the Holy Land, does that have anything to do with the coming of the Mashiach? Lo v'lo, absolutely not. This is nothing to do with the redemption, nor is it the beginning of the redemption. Because as we said earlier, we were sent into exile because of our sins. As long as the reason for the exile has not changed, we're still sinning, then the exile itself has not changed either. Only when we do tshuva, only when we repent and stop sinning, and we remove the factor that caused the exile, only then will we be able to say that the Geula will come via the Mashiach. Now, before I finish the Lubavitcher Rebbe, let me just point something out. We've seen already now 3 sources, almost. We saw the Satmar Rav, we saw Rav Shach, and we saw most of what the Lubavitcher Rebbe said. And although there were differences between them, they all agreed that this is nothing to do with the Mashiach. What is it? It's something that God allowed to happen. That's either something very, very bad, or something partially good, or an opportunity that we missed. But it's got nothing to do with the Mashiach, and the Mashiach will come when the Mashiach will come. I want you to think back to the very beginning of the chapter. In the very beginning of the chapter, we saw machloka between the Rambam and the Ramban about how the Mashiach is going to come. Is it going to happen miraculously, supernaturally, or is it going to happen slowly through a natural process? If you remember, the Rambam was of the opinion that no supernatural events are going to take place. It's all going to happen naturally, which also, by the way, assumedly means it's going to take time. You can't bring millions of people back to a country, build a country from scratch, build even the Beit HaMikdash. It's a building. Someone has to take stones and build it. It's going to take time. It's not going to happen in an instant. Versus the Ramban, who seemed to talk about a world that changes completely, where miracles are possible, open miracles. It's clear that all of these rabbis that we're talking about now have to expect, they have to follow an opinion like that of the Ramban, meaning that the Mashiach, that they're saying this is not the Mashiach. When the Mashiach comes, then the Mashiach will come, and the Mashiach, when he comes, it's going to be supernatural. Interestingly enough, the Lubavitcher Rebbe tries to make that argument here from the Rambam, the one who I just said seems to think otherwise. So let's see what he says here. Uchipsak din habarur shel harambam. The Rambam tells us how you know when Mashiach's here. Sheyitzia min hagalut tiyeh b'derech zo. This is how it's going to work, writes the Rambam. Yamod melech mi Beit David. A king will arise from the house of David. This king has to be a religious person who is knowledgeable in Torah and observes the Torah. And he's going to force all the Jews to follow the Torah. And he'll fight all these battles on behalf of God, and he'll succeed. And he'll defeat all the enemies. Even if all that happens, we can assume that he's Mashiach, but it's not 100% clear yet. If he succeeds in all of this, and he builds the Beit HaMikdash and brings all the Jews back to Eretz Yisrael, then you'll know, after everything's done, that it's definitely the Mashiach, and we'll all serve God. So, that's what the Rambam writes. The Lubavitcher Rebbe understands that as describing a process that has to happen in that order. First a king, and then all of Am Yisrael doing tshuva, and then wars, and then winning the wars, and bringing back everyone to Israel after building the Beit HaMikdash. Harelanu psak din barom. I'm reading now the rest of the Lubavitcher Rebbe's quote here. Shagalut nimshechet. That shows you, therefore, that the exile continues ad asher yamod melech mi Beit David, until there's a king. It's not the Geula yet. The rak kesheyivneh mikdash bimkomo. Only after the Beit HaMikdash is built, V'acharei binyan hamikdash yikabetz nidchei Yisrael. And after the Beit HaMikdash is built, then there's going to be all the Jews coming back to Eretz Yisrael. Rak az yedu shehu Mashiach ba'adai. Then we'll know it's the Mashiach. Ulfizek muvan shebetkufa ba'anu nimtzayim. And therefore, in our generation, says the Lubavitcher Rebbe, eina atchalta de Geula. This is not even the beginning of the redemption. V'aliyatam shel revot Yudim le'eretz hakodesh eina kibbutz galuyot. And all the millions of Jews who've made Aliyah and come back to Eretz Yisrael, that's not kibbutz galuyot. That's not the fulfillment. I said it looks like exactly what the Nevi'im said is going to happen, but that's not what it is, says the Lubavitcher Rebbe. When Mashiach comes, all the Jews are going to come back to Eretz Yisrael. But the Jews are already coming back to Eretz Yisrael. No, that's not the redemption. What is it? Efsharut shel hatzalat Yudim Rabim bizman hagalut. Even though the exile is still going on, we're able to save many Jews, and that's a good thing, but it's not what the prophets promised. This is something else. It's not yet time for the redemption. Had we acted differently, maybe it would be the time for the redemption. If we act differently now, maybe it will become the time of the redemption. But this, what's happened until now, has nothing to do with that. Omnam Kain, it is true. Lachar sheyeshno kibbutz כה גדול של יהודים, צריך להיות אצלם עניין של הנהגה. Now, once you have all these Jews in Israel, they need to have some kind of government. You can't, just let people do whatever they want. So he's not, again, he, like Rav Shach, is not against the existence of a Jewish government. Rav Shach said it doesn't matter. You're not allowed to have your own government till Mashiach comes. I'm sorry, the Satmar Rebbe said that. But Rav Shach and Lubavitcher Rebbe are not saying that. He's saying, obviously, you need to have a Jewish government now that you have all these Jews in the land of Israel. But lo meluchas chas v'shalom. Don't consider that to be like a melucha, like the king that the Torah described. Meluchai tiyeh rak b'viat HaMashiach. That'll only be when Mashiach comes. For now, we have a government because we have to run a country. And there has to be laws. V'hanhagahu davar hechrechi b'kibbutz shel Yudim. So we need to have it. It's a practical thing. U'chemo chen b'inyanei bitachon b'rechev b'susim. And you need to have an army. You have enemies who want to attack, you have to have an army. He's not saying you're not allowed to have an army. Satmar Rav said we're not allowed to have an army. Okay, you have to have a government, you have to have an army. But make sure you realize this has nothing to do with the redemption. The redemption will happen only when Mashiach comes. Okay, so like I said, to sum up this video, in the beginning I talked about, and the final video you'll see rabbis who agree with what I said earlier, that it looks like all these things that have happened over the last 150 or 200 years are the fulfillment of the prophecy of the Geula. We saw three rabbis, sources 10, 11, and 12, who say absolutely not. The Satmar Rav, who says not only is this not the coming of the Geula, it's the exact opposite. It's evil, it's terrible, it's Rishayim, and you can't have anything to do with the state of Israel. Even if you live in the land, you're not allowed to have anything to do with the state. And then we saw Rav Shach and the Lubavitcher Rebbe, who are a little bit more moderate than that, who said the state exists, and it might even be a bracha from Hashem, and we have to participate and try to make it better, but don't think this has anything to do with the Mashiach at all. In the next and final video, we'll see rabbis who say otherwise.